The African Deep Dive podcast is brought to you by the African Technology Policy Studies Network. This podcast explores how science, technology, and innovation can drive sustainable development and global inclusion in Africa.
Globally, we just can't ignore these pressing environmental challenges anymore, can we?
No, absolutely not.
We're seeing, growing worries about greenhouse gas emissions, wasted natural resources, and just the devastating fallout from pollution. It feels like a really critical moment.
It definitely is.
So today we're doing a deep dive into eco-innovation policies for sustainable development in Africa. Our source for this is a fascinating policy brief from the African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS. And it looks really closely at the policy landscape for eco-innovation in 6 African countries: Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, and Zambia.
Right, a good cross-section.
Yeah. And our mission today really is to unpack what eco-innovation actually means, look at how African nations are currently sort of integrating these ideas, and talk about what's really needed to, harness their potential for sustainable development.
Okay.
Think of it as maybe a shortcut to understanding a pretty critical path forward for the continent's environment and its economy.
A vital connection.
Okay, so let's unpack this. What exactly is eco-innovation? We hear the term thrown around, but maybe we need a clear definition.
Yeah, good place to start.
At its core, eco-innovation is about developing products or processes that actively contribute to sustainability.
Right.
So that means reducing the use of natural resources, things like materials, energy, water, land, and at the same time, decreasing the release of harmful stuff across a product's whole life cycle.
The whole life cycle.
Crucially, though, it also has to offer real customer and business value. It's not just about being green. It's got to be smart and sustainable, too.
That's spot on. And it's often called green innovation, too. The main aim is developing products, processes, skills, or even totally new business models that lead to ecological improvements, directly or indirectly, for sustainable development.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here, especially for Africa, is the why now. It's undeniable.
Right.
These countries are facing this sort of complex web of social, economic, and environmental challenges all linked together.
Yeah.
And many African economies still really rely heavily on sectors like agriculture, mining, forestry for their GDP.
Resource dependent, yeah.
Exactly. And that dependency, plus issues like, climate change, desertification, food and water insecurity, widespread environmental degradation, it just ramps up the urgency for eco-innovation.
So these aren't just abstract environmental worries. They're hitting people's livelihoods, national economies directly.
Precisely. And these challenges have pushed for big policy changes, both globally and locally. You've got the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs from 2015, a global blueprint, really.
Right.
And within Africa, there's the African Union Agenda 2063. That's a 50-year roadmap for the Africa we want.
Okay.
These frameworks, especially when you combine them with new tech and innovation, they actually present a huge opportunity, a potential boom for industry, really. If scientific research gets translated into smart, sustainable policies and plans.
So there's potential there.
Huge potential. Look at Kenya. Their move to a green economy could bring in something like $45 billion by 2030.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus better food security, cleaner environment, more wealth. Or Senegal investing in solar and wind. That could create up to 30,000 extra jobs by 2035.
Incredible number.
The economic potential is immense, not just the environmental side.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. This was maybe one of the biggest surprises from the brief. You'd think, right, you'd expect to find specific standalone eco-innovation policies in these countries.
You would assume so, yeah.
But the study found something totally different. The main finding from this ATPS's brief: there are no explicit standalone eco-innovation policies in any of the 6 countries studied. None in Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, or Zambia.
That's a really crucial kind of counterintuitive point. It's not that these nations aren't pursuing sustainability, it's how they're doing it. Instead of dedicated policies, these eco-innovation principles or practices, they're implied.
Implied.
Okay. Yeah, and they're carried out through loads of existing policies in different sectors. We're talking agriculture, environment, natural resources that covers water, forestry, mining.
Right.
Science, technology, innovation, energy, health, trade and industry, transport. It's spread out.
Wow, okay.
And what's more, the constitutions of most of these countries already emphasize these kinds of principles.
Ah, okay.
And they've all signed up to key international agreements aiming to cut emissions, tackle climate change, conserve biodiversity, boost environmental sustainability.
Right, the big international trade.
Exactly. And those agreements inherently have strong eco-innovation principles baked in, even if they don't use that specific label.
So it's not like starting from zero. It's more about finding, connecting, maybe strengthening what's already there just under the surface?
Precisely. Which brings up a big question. How are these principles actually, showing up on the ground if there aren't explicit policies?
Yeah, what does it look like?
Well, across these countries, you see this sort of patchwork of existing laws and strategies. They're not labeled eco-innovation, maybe, but they're clearly driving it. Take Botswana, for example. They've got solid environmental impact assessments, laws against pollution, and they're actively working on their energy future with renewable strategies, biomass energy plans. In Ghana, their Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, enforces compliance. They even issue fines. And they make sure mining operations get environmental permits embedding care into resource use.
And Kenya. We all heard about their plastic bag ban, right? So it's funny, you see something tangible like that, and you don't necessarily connect it back to this broader implicit eco-innovation strategy.
Absolutely. But it is. Kenya's Environmental Management Act, their constitution, they provide these big frameworks. And their green economy strategy aims for a low-carbon future. That 2017 plastic bag ban replaced with biodegradable options. That's a powerful, direct example of eco-innovation happening through existing legal power.
Makes sense.
Then you have Malawi. Their constitution supports responsible environmental management, and they've got legislation to prevent harmful practices.
Okay.
Nigeria has woven eco-innovation into its national science and tech policies. They've got renewable energy and energy efficiency policies, a biofuel policy using agricultural products to cut pollution and improve fuel quality.
Right, using what they have.
Exactly. And finally, Zambia. The term eco-innovation might be new there, not explicit in policies yet, but their National Vision 2030, it strongly focuses on sustainable socioeconomic development. And that guides their existing energy and science policies towards eco-friendly practices.
Okay.
So yeah, the term might be new, but the intention, the actions, they're definitely there.
That's a great overview, seeing how these ideas are kind of stitched into the existing fabric of governance. So to really get our heads around eco-innovation, the brief gives us a helpful framework. We can look at its 1, target, 2, mechanism, and 3, impact.
Okay, target, mechanism, impact.
Let's start with target. This is basically what is being innovated. Is it a new product, a service, a more efficient process, a clever marketing method, or maybe even changes within an organization or broader societal things like norms and values?
Right.
And these targets can be technological or non-technological.
Okay, that makes sense. And then mechanism is about how the change actually happens.
Exactly, how the target gets introduced. The brief points out 4 ways. First, modification, just small step-by-step tweaks to what already exists. Second, redesign more significant changes to existing things. Third, alternatives, bringing in substitutes that do the same job. And fourth, creation, designing completely new products, processes, maybe even new organizations or institutions.
Modification, redesign, alternatives, creation.
Got it. So it seems like the scale of the change, the mechanism, links directly to how much environmental benefit you get. That feels like a powerful connection.
It really is.
And this idea of impact, which the brief talks about, seems fundamental to understanding what really is eco-innovation and how it connects to things like the circular economy.
You've nailed the core idea there. Impact is all about the effect the eco-innovation has on the environment across its entire life cycle.
Right. Cradle to grave.
Yeah.
Or cradle to cradle, ideally.
Exactly. And for a given target, the potential size of the environmental benefit usually depends on the mechanism used. Those bigger, more systemic changes, alternatives, and creation generally offer much higher potential benefits than just modification or design.
Okay. Bigger change, bigger impact.
Precisely. And this is absolutely critical for the circular economy. We need to shift from those old linear patterns, extract, make, use, dispose.
The take, make, waste model.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
We need to shift to circular patterns. And eco-innovation is how we do it. Think of it having 2 parts. There's the hardware, the actual eco-innovative tech and infrastructure needed to turn waste back into usable resources, like machines recycling plastic. And then there's the software, the eco-innovative skills, the expertise, the new business models that actually make these circular transformations profitable.
So it needs both the tech and the smarts to make it work financially.
Absolutely. It has to be economically viable, too.
Okay, so given this landscape, implicit policies, huge potential, the need for circularity, where do we go from here? The brief actually gives some really clear recommendations for boosting eco-innovation development.
Yeah, and that raises the key question.
Yeah.
What concrete steps are needed? How do we move from these implied practices to policies that are explicit and really impactful? The brief lays out 4 main recommendations.
All right, what's the first one?
First, and this is critical, increase funding and resource allocation for R&D, research and development.
The money. Always comes back to funding.
It often does. This was flagged as a major gap. Current funds are just not enough. So the suggestion is significantly boost the allocation, find new ways to collaborate, like public-private partnerships,
Right.
and use policy tools to actually incentivize investment. Get both public and private sectors putting money in.
Makes sense. What's number 2?
Second, they strongly recommend enacting a standalone policy on eco-innovation.
Okay, so making it explicit after all.
Yes, but it's not just about tweaking old policies. It might mean reorienting them or even developing brand new ones to get a truly holistic view of sustainability, focusing on the entire life cycle, reuse, recycling, not just using resources efficiently at the start.
Okay, a broader perspective.
Exactly. And this involves tackling legal hurdles, like, say, government licensing processes that might stifle innovation, and crucially, protecting intellectual property rights, IP rights.
Right, patents and things.
Yeah, the legal framework securing innovations. The big challenge is patents can be really expensive, often too expensive for innovators in Africa.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So reducing those costs or maybe subsidizing them is vital, also key. Establishing local markets for these eco-friendly innovations and technologies. You need somewhere to sell them.
Create the demand, yeah.
Right. And all this needs better policy alignment, stronger coordination between different government ministries, less silo thinking.
So a much more joined-up, intentional approach across the board, really connecting the dots for innovators.
Exactly. That's the idea. Then the third recommendation is to build a common vision for eco-innovation and a solid system for measuring progress.
A common vision. Okay, what does that involve?
It means filling the knowledge gaps first. Through, like, massive public awareness campaigns, advocacy, doing more in-depth case studies to see what's working, what isn't. The goal is to develop a shared vision for environmentally friendly social systems with clear roadmaps for Africa. And, very importantly, this needs a common definition of eco-innovation and some kind of scoreboard for benchmarking progress.
Like the Global Innovation Index.
Exactly like that. Using measurable indicators. It creates transparency and a way to track who's doing well, celebrate success, and maybe foster some healthy competition.
Okay, measure it to manage it. Makes sense. And the last one.
The fourth recommendation is about education. Realign academic curricula to include eco-innovation in all disciplines.
All disciplines, not just science and engineering.
All of them. To make this sustainable long-term, these principles need to be integrated everywhere, from primary school right through university.
Wow.
It sensitizes everyone, helps bridge knowledge gaps, and importantly, it guides students towards careers in eco-innovation.
Building the pipeline.
Precisely. And the brief also stresses tackling gender inequalities here, actively supporting women, youth, people with disabilities in pursuing studies and careers related to eco-innovation. We need diverse talent.
That's really important. An inclusive approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels clear that while eco-innovation might be, a relatively new term in African policy talk, the actual principles behind it are deeply embedded in the continent's long journey towards sustainable development.
Absolutely. We've seen how nations are already taking really crucial steps, even if they're often implied, hidden within sectoral policies or national visions.
Yeah.
The big challenge now, I think, is to make those steps explicit, make sure they're properly coordinated, and crucially get them adequately resourced so they can really accelerate the impact.
Right, turning the implicit into explicit funded action. So here's a final thought for you listening in. What if every business, every policy, whatever its main goal was, had to be rigorously looked at for its potential positive environmental and social impact? Just imagine. How might that fundamentally shift the pace of sustainable development, not just in Africa, but everywhere? And maybe what role could you play in pushing for that kind of shift in how we think about progress?
Thank you for listening. Join us every Thursday for more insightful conversations.
We would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, suggestions and comments with us via our social media platforms or email.